be my first. Right. Okay.
We ready?
I'm ready. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right.
All right. Hello and welcome. My name is Austin Britton. I am one of the co-presidents of GAU, Graduate Assistants United. I've also been serving on our bargaining team and as one of our bargaining co-chairs throughout our full book process of the last few years.
I'm Kathy Irvins. I'm one of the other co-presidents, and I'm just going to get right into it. So I'm going to get into the history of our union. For over 50 years, Graduate Assistants United has served as the recognized collective bargaining agent for over 4,000 graduate assistants, or GAs, at the University of Florida. I'll continually use the abbreviation GA to refer to graduate assistants throughout this presentation. Over time, we've won tuition waivers, health insurance, paid leaves, countless increases, and a multitude of other contractual improvements. We contribute heavily to the status of the University of Florida, and these wins make this possible through facilitating excellence in our employees. So, what is a graduate assistant? We are educators, researchers, we are professionals with specialized work, specialized degrees. We work in labs, we have no right to renewal, and low pay. We have to work at UF, especially if you're an international student, and to the University of Florida, we are essential for its functions. This fall, we have 1,200 TAs and 2,100 RAs. TAs are teaching assistants, and RAs are research assistants. A lot of introductory classes are often taught by graduate assistants, and they build the foundation for their educational experience here at the University of Florida. Some of them are actually instructors of record, which requires special training and in often cases, a master's degree. We make UF success possible, and the better we work and the better we're able to do our jobs, the more educated the students become, and the better the state moves forward.
I have a question, and you'll probably get to it soon, and maybe I missed it. GA is the abbreviation for graduate assistant. Are TAs and RAs GAs?
Yes.
Okay.
The different classifications under the same type.
Okay, very good.
This is basically just the type of work that they perform as a graduate assistant.
Very good, thank you.
Awesome. Again, like I said, they provide about 30% of us teach, and then 70% of us do research, and then we propel the research output that pushes you up to top ranks. They're public goods, teaching and research. I have a few headlines from the University of Florida's research. We have cancer research going on here, AI research, different plant stuff, things related to newborns, things related to different animal species, things related to sociology, humanities. Every pretty much department has it. These are some headlines from over the course of the past few years. Research is pretty irrefutable as a public good. I have some quotes from Laura Connor, the Vice Chancellor of Research at the University of Arkansas, and then two from our very own University of Florida. Laura Connor says, research truly is a public good. Scientific research has resulted in technologies and amenities that we rely on in our everyday lives. David Norton, Vice President of Research at the University of Florida, says that he leads the research enterprise at the University of Florida that exceeds $1 billion a year in volume, just to put in perspective the amount of money that's invested in this work. And then our own Office of Research says, research at UF plays a significant role in advancing our fundamental understanding of the universe, generating creative breakthroughs that lead to technologies with positive benefits, creating opportunities for economic growth in the state, and changing the trajectory of young people through education. A bit more about the trajectory of young people through education. The university's mission is to enable our students to lead and influence the next generation and beyond for economic, cultural, and societal benefit. This one is also from the University of Florida, specifically from our faculty handbook, which instructors of records will have to follow. The Council of Graduate Schools report on graduate education and the public good, which is a multi-institutional organization, says a strong link exists between U.S. graduate education, the production of knowledge, and economic and social prosperity. The United States needs a cadre of highly skilled leaders and experts in a variety of fields to address current and future challenges. Increasingly, graduate schools is where future professionals obtain the knowledge and skills needed to solve big, complex problems.
So on the screen is going to be sort of a summary of the issues as we understand them and our position as we are at Impasse today. So the first provision is Article 10, and including Article 10, Section 1 and Section 3. This article overall contains most of the language regarding raises and pay for graduate assistants, including the minimum segment, which is the minimum amount a graduate assistant can make in a given contract, as well as things like any raises that we would receive. Our ultimate goal for GAU is a living wage for all graduate assistants. Currently within Alachua County, that would be around $45,000. Now, obviously, that is a long-term goal. That's not the number that we are asking for today. And instead, our position today is that a 9-month graduate assistant should make $26,000 on our minimum stipend. So a couple of clarification points here. We have here 9-month and 12-month graduate assistants. The difference between those is if they have that payment over the summer. There are other graduate assistants on different contracts semesterly, or they might work only over the summer. But typically 9 and 12 months are the most common, so those are the basis we use. In addition, all of them are listed at 0.5 full-time equivalent, or FTE. We do this value because that is the most common value across the university. That's the maximum most graduate assistants do. And it, in fact, is the legal maximum for our international GAs on their visa. They're not allowed to work over this 0.5 FTE. And so for them, while it is 20 hours a week, that is the full time and the only source of income that they're able to make while at the University of Florida. The current stipend is $19,200 within the contract, so for a 9-month GA. So this is a step up from that to $26,000. Either way, this would take us a step towards that living wage while leaving us, a little far behind that goal, but a step towards that direction. We believe and we focus on raising the minimum because raising the minimum stipend provides the most benefit to the most graduate assistants. This raise, as projected here, just to the minimum stipend, would give a raise to 79% of our unit, over 3,000 people. In addition to increases to the minimum stipend, we are also asking for a merit raise of $800 for a 9-month graduate assistant and $1,067 for a 12-month graduate assistant. And those would be for assistants that already have a full semester working at UF, so continuing graduate assistants. Based off our calculations, this would cost the university a total of $17.2 million, which is equivalent to around 0.5% of UF's expenses based off the 2023-2024 fiscal year. It's also an increase of 14.5% for the total amount spent on salaries for graduate assistants. In addition to our values for what we believe is right for the minimum stipend and the merit raise, we also have what we believe to be the University of Florida's position based off our last bargaining session, which would be $20,600 for a 9-month GA and $27,000 for a 12-month GA, and no merit raises on that point. In addition, for both of these positions, as last time we were at the bargaining table, both of these raises to the minimum stipend were listed to be effective October 1st, 2024. So that's what we're also basing this off of as well.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The effective date for both of your positions is October 1st, 2024.
In our latest proposals, yes, those were the dates we had listed. So effective October 1st, 2024, this would become the minimum stipend. So graduate assistants would be entitled to back pay to that point.
Okay.
In addition to Article 10, we also have Article 16.4. This has to do with our release time positions. These are graduate assistants that are released from working within a specific department and work for GAU on contract negotiation, or on contract enforcement, on meeting with individual graduate assistants, and helping to make sure that graduate assistants feel heard and that we can address issues as they arise. Our position on release time is very simple. We know release time is vital for our union and is essential for graduate assistants to be heard. And we are asking for continuation of current contract language on that. Our understanding of the University of Florida's position on this is to completely remove the release time program from the collective bargaining agreement.
Let me ask a general question, give me a little bit more background. How long have the parties been in negotiation?
We've been in negotiations since September of 2023.
So you've been in negotiations for more than 2 years?
Yes. My next slide is actually a timeline of our negotiations.
I anticipate. Go ahead.
Yeah, correct. So here is sort of a rough bargaining timeline of how we got to Impasse today. We thought this was important to make sure we all knew where we came from and how we got to where we are. So the last time that GAU and UF were not bargaining at the table was January of 2023, where we did an annual reopener for Article 10. Our contract typically has annual reopeners for Article 10, and then we do our full book negotiation every 3 years. That single article by itself took around 9 months, and we got that finalized in September of 2023, just 3 months before our current contract was set to expire in December of 2023. So right after we finished opening Article 10 and closing it, we immediately switched into full book negotiations in September. So once we were in negotiations, the two articles, we have some notes on there about how Article 10 and Article 16 were proposed to us. So for Article 16, our first proposal from the University of Florida was in December of 2023, where they actually maintained most of the current project language with minor changes, but nothing too significant. And it wasn't, in fact, until February of 2024 that the University of Florida switched to the complete removal of the lease type program as it is within our contract. And they have remained steady on that ever since. For Article 10, our first proposal on that was actually in February 2024 as well, where we proposed where we always start, which is a living wage. And following that, we did not actually receive a counter proposal on Article 10 until August of 2024, basically a year into negotiations, we got our first counter proposal on that. So following that, we move into 2025. We did have a couple of rounds of counter proposals between parties at this point. But once we hit January 2025, the University of Florida actually took their last final proposal and implemented it university-wide for graduate assistants, giving the GAU team just sort of an hour notice that they were going to do this. Obviously, this was something they were able to do through a waiver that existed in Article 10, Section 5, but it did undermine, in our position, in our opinion, the bargaining process, and it kind of led to this further deterioration of our relationship at the bargaining table. Nevertheless, after this point, we still continue to try to find an acceptable conclusion to negotiations, including to the point of connecting Article 10 and 16, and at a certain point resorting to full CCL at Article 16, Section 2, just to try to find a conclusion. However, in July of this year, our team determined that our efforts at the table had no conclusion in sight, and we were prepared to declare impasse. So was UF team, and so at that same session, we kind of directly declared an impasse, where we filled out the paperwork.
Remind me again what CCL stands for.
Current contract language.
Thank you.
So now we are in November of 2025. It has been 2 years since our last contract was even supposed to expire at the end of 2023. If we had finished our negotiations on time, we would have had 2 additional reopeners of Article 10 to help push stipends to a higher amount, which we have now lost and will not receive again. At this point, if we were on schedule, we would be considering opening full book again and starting that process because our contracts lasted a few 3 years. It has been 2 years since a contract negotiated raise, and has been no cease. There's no progress in sight for graduate assistants who continue to suffer under this increased cost of living that we are living in. So when we began our full book negotiations, we sent a survey out to graduate assistants to try to determine how far their stipend was stretching. Our goal is always to start with a living wage. That's the cost that you need to live within Alachua County for a single adult. That is $45,000, and we are far a step below that. And what we found immediately was that of the 400 GAs that responded to the survey, a tenth of our unit, 50% of them reported that their stipend covered their expenses with nothing left over, and only 5% were actually able to save after all of their necessary bills. Even worse, however, was that 45% of graduate assistants reported that their stipend sometimes or never covers their monthly living expenses. In addition, 28% of respondents reported food insecurity at this point. And this was in fall of 2023. This is data that is now 2 years out of date as the cost of living has continued growing. So we expect this problem to only have gotten worse for graduate assistants.
So I think the lived experience kind of helps paint a better picture as well. This is from a bargaining session on November 18th, 2024, where a graduate assistant from the biology department was talking about their personal experience. We've had people testify throughout the bargaining process, and this individual said when they first came here, they were doing DoorDash on a bike so they could make rent payments. They feel like there's a deep misalignment between the perceived status of doing scientific research and the kind of work that takes so much time and effort and training to get to this point, and being paid like I'm doing something that doesn't matter. Additionally, to make ends meet, graduate assistants at the University of Florida have had to do a variety of different things in order to just survive in Alachua County. This is from the same survey with a 10% representative sample that, again, is 2 years old, so we do expect this to be much worse with higher percentages of people who need to work additional jobs during the year, work additional jobs in the summer, take out student loans, take out private loans, rely on family, friends, or spouse, rely on credit cards, dip into their savings, or result at other means. These are not really things that someone who is working for the university should have to do just to labor for its success.
When we start negotiations, we always start with the living wage. We start at this $45,000 figure. And we've been told at the bargaining table, again, that this value is sort of out of proportion with what is reasonably expected for a raise. Our minimum stipend for a 12-month TA is around $26,000. So to raise it to $45,000 would be a large step and a large cost in the university. However, this has not always been the case, and hopefully this chart kind of exemplifies, the issues that graduate assistants are going through. As far as 2017 through 2020, graduate assistants on a minimum 12-month stipend were paid pretty close to the living wage. We weren't quite there. We were at 95, 96%, but we were right in that ballpark. Graduate assistants were not struggling as much as they are. When you look further, you see this cost of living increase over the past several years within Alachua County. You see that our costs, our spending power over time is continuing to diminish to the point where in 2025, we're not at 95, 96% of the living wage, we're at 57%. This is a critical issue that's causing thousands of GAs, to suffer just for the sake of paying their bills, for the privilege of working for the University of Florida. And again, this is for 12-month graduate assistants. 9-month graduate assistants are making even less on the minimum stipend, and they're suffering even more as you're going through. This is, hopefully kind of shows why we think a living wage is not something that is, out of the norm, and it's something that should be expected, and something that University of Florida has proven, again, that they are able to afford in the past several years. So the University of Florida, of course, does not exist in a vacuum. It is, we, again and again, we hear the University of Florida compare itself to other top state schools and schools across the nation. And you can see, yes, according to, when we look at other state university system schools, we are ranked better than them, according to the U.S. News and World Report. Except when it comes to our stipends, we are actually paid less than these other schools. Our graduate assistants are working harder. We're raising this ranking as high as possible. We are making the success at the University of Florida possible, and yet we are paid less than other graduate assistants. Even when you include the proposed raise from UF as of our last bargaining session, we're still paid less than some of these other schools and on par with others. I mean, we are fighting and comparing ourselves against other poverty wages, and we are losing that fight.
Looking at the top 10 and our mission alignment, we're trying to compete nationally, try to remain a top 5 public university. We should also benchmark our stipends in comparison to these schools. I'm going to show the inclusion of the proposed raise also just because I think it highlights where we are on the graph, because there's a lot on there. We are at the absolute bottom of the barrel, even after UF imposes the increase to the minimum. We're at the bottom of the top 10 public universities in that orange box, and better, yes.
And these numbers which you just outlined, those are the numbers which is your position at Impasse?
This is their
current.
This is current,
okay.
What they're currently being paid. Yes. And why our position is more, at least a little bit better. And comparable to these other universities. Better stipends means we can recruit and retain the most competitive applicants to our graduate programs, which contributes to better rankings because people can do their jobs. Including in the UF Board of Trustees subcommittee, when they were discussing graduate housing on campus, their conclusion of these meetings was to get UF in the top 75 percentile of our peers. Ultimately, we would need a higher cost of living adjustment and a stipend increase. So why is the university not pushing for these increases at the bargaining table? And why are we falling behind our peers? The top 20 average is $42,600, and we're about $15,000 less than the average. That's a lot.
So obviously we have been bargaining for 2 years at this point. We've had a lot of time to try to figure out the why of this. Why is it such a hard struggle for us to kind of get closer to the living wage at the University of Florida? And one of the things we think about a lot is, can the University of Florida afford the proposed raises that we are given? And so what we did is we had an FEA analyst, Greg Piscon, review publicly available UF audited financial statements, which is going to be available in our brief, trying to determine, okay, we're not great at looking at the numbers. Can we have a professional look at these and tell us and help us figure out what the answer is? And what we found is kind of crystal clear. UF has had a positive change in their net position all throughout the last 9 years, including during COVID and during shutdowns. They had a positive change in their net position. This includes an increase to their total assets by 70%, or $2.5 billion, and their net position has increased by almost $2 billion over this 9-year span. They have such a positive outlook, looking forward, that the S&P changed their debt rating outlook to positive, one of their highest ratings, leading the Board of Trustees chair to say, "This good news from S&P emphasizes an important point that should make Gator Nation proud. The University of Florida is in a strong position to do great things." We are not arguing that the university does not have an obligation to remain financially viable. And we want the university and GAU to work together to make sure that we can pay GAs an acceptable amount while the university can continue succeeding and finding this success. However, this outlook is quite frankly very clear. The increase to the stipend and raises as we presented here would increase total university expenses by an estimated 0.4%. And while that would not appreciably affect university functions, it would drastically improve the lives of thousands of graduate assistants who would then be more effective at teaching and conducting research and further contributing to the mission of UF. In addition, this is not something we're coming out of, randomly. We've discussed this at the bargaining table. When we asked, does the University of Florida have the money to increase graduate assistant pay? The chief bargainer for UF has said, yes, I've said that. I've said it in these terms. They're simply not willing to spend any more money. Not that they do not have the money, as they clearly do, but that they're not willing to spend it to increase the livelihoods of thousands of their employees. In addition to that, we have these considerations. We talked about them a little bit, but just to bring them up again, we've been bargaining for over 2 years. In a typical schedule, if we were on time, we would have had 2 additional reopeners for Article 10 to push for additional raises, to push for an increase to the minimum stipend that we are not going to get. We have lost those chances, and those are gone forever. In addition to that, in January 2025, UF did impose their last best final offer on Article 10 via the existing waiver in 10.5 that's typically used to increase departments and individuals to make sure that they can be paid competitive wages. Instead, this was used to apply to all graduate assistants across the unit, giving a GAU leadership team just an hour notice. This contradicted, in fact, their previous statement on requiring ratification on full vote for any salary changes. And in fact, we had proposed an Article 10 where we said, let's get this figured out as soon as possible, and then let's ratify it early. Let's get this put in the contract early so graduate assistants are paid the most, and we can make sure that they're taken care of. And when they denied that, they told us there are a couple of reasons why not to do an MOU for Article 10. But the primary one is that we're not going to do anything salary-wise without it being ratified. Like, it's going to have to be ratified by both you and the Board of Trustees. This was in September of 2024, just 3 to 4 months before they did exactly that and imposed their last offer across the university, further leading to deterioration at the bargaining table. This is the notice they sent out to graduate assistants, and there's a couple things to look for here. And the first one is this matches the language within Article 10 verbatim. It is their last best final offer with minor add-ons to the beginning and bottom. The problem is this is such a confusing remark that a lot of our members thought that we were done negotiating. We thought, oh, they have come to an agreement and implemented this. When it couldn't be further from the truth, we were so far away at the bargaining table, but now we have this additional confusion of what is actually going on. And in fact, following that, at the end of it, we see the university and UF-GAU are still engaged in contract negotiations, and the university remains committed to collective bargaining process. Except after this point, after these were imposed, there has been no change or a minimal change to the proposed minimum stipend from the University of Florida since this point. This has been a final sort of Hail Mary, and they have finished since then.
Okay. Do we have any other questions before we move on to Article 15, which is the second issue I have?
No.
Oh, cool. So I'm going to start off with Article 16 in regards to case law from another special magistrate hearing from AF-SCME, Council 79, number 3342, and USF, Board of Trustees. The magistrate in that hearing said, "It is long held that contractual release time clauses, so long as they are negotiated at arm's length, are a legal and fundamental way in which employee organizations and public employers can help provide effective and harmonious labor relations. Our release time program has been part of our collective bargaining agreement for at least 20 years, and it's been agreed to be mutually beneficial over that time. We also have this program in common with other nationwide faculty and graduate assistant contracts, including in the state of Florida at the University of South Florida and Florida State University." Just for reference, I have the current contract language as follows on there, and I highlighted some pieces of it. It is intended for the carrying out of the UF-GAU's obligations in representing employees and for university-related UF-GAU business at the university or state level. At the bargaining table, we've asked, can you elaborate again on why you are not interested in continuing the release time program? And our chief marketer said, sure, I think it's multifaceted, but I think the primary thing is that we no longer see a mutual benefit. There's just no mutual benefit. They think it's purely a benefit for GAU. I will very clearly state that it is a mutual benefit because it helps support our employees. We provide administrative and organizational support. Release timers are the first line for graduate assistants and Graduate Assistants United relations for grievances or other issues. We ensure that there is a peer representative available for necessary tasks and meetings. We are guaranteed available liaisons for the administration and relevant units, like the Benefits Committee, Employee Relations Trainings, or healthcare. We provide proactive resolution of issues and collaborative contract enforcement. We provide peer-to-peer support and direction of graduate assistants to university resources, alleviating the pressure on the university to communicate what is available to their students and employees. Oftentimes, they will end up helping people who aren't even graduate assistants who just happen to go to the office hours to request help with university resources. They work with local entities on initiatives that support the well-being of graduate assistants. The program helps with graduate assistant retention and tuition and funding retention. Our final considerations are, the university has not explained why the program is no longer perceived to them as mutually beneficial, despite its existence for over 20 years with no challenge. Additionally, our primary issue is that the University of Florida has not offered anything in return. Over the summer, we were willing to accept UF's best and final offer on Article 10 in return for current contract language on Article 16 and a swift ratification of the full book contract so that we can move forward together on figuring out what would be best for our employees. However, given the continued delays of ratification, considering that it's been over 2 years, we would like both a step towards a living wage and current contract language here today on Article 16.4. We are no longer willing to make that compromise as of today.
Overall, throughout this bargaining process, this couple of years, we've had a couple of goals. One of them is to remain consistent and open at the bargaining table. Whenever we gave a proposal for our minimum stipend, we tried to tie that to objective measures or our goals, a living wage, or connecting it to the F1 visa income requirements that are set by the University of Florida. We think deeply about each of our proposals. We try to do the research to understand where we are, where we want to be, and if each proposal takes us one step closer to that agreement.
To be clear, we're not trying to get rich from this job. We're just asking the university for help to survive. We deserve to pay rent without worrying. We deserve to be supported by the university and to have a union that's able to address issues quickly and efficiently and be available for us. Most of all, graduate assistants deserve respect for everything that they have done and continue to do for this university. It is irrefutable fact that the specialized research and teaching excellence that the labor provided by our graduate assistants does supports the public good. Drastic improvement in the quality of life of those who provide these services would be a drastic improvement to that work. If we want to do great things together, like Board of Trustees Chair Mari Hosseini said, what greater thing to do than invest in the workers who allow this university to run and succeed for less than 0.5% of the entire budget. I also wanted to point out that the student government did pass the resolution unanimously, and we have been circulating a petition that has got over 600 signatures. So the public does also stand behind us. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do you have any questions regarding the proposal? No, it's not presentation. Okay. Thank you. Just because Mr. Madmore has no questions for you does not mean that you are not entitled to ask him questions when he's finished.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Madmore?
I'm not going to project anything, so maybe
I can turn this off very easily.
yeah, that's great.
Yeah, no worries.
packet slide. So if you take it down. And I'll walk through.
Okay.
from the front.
No, I'm killing you. Okay. I think we can go to slide number 3. And I'm gonna give some background. I agree with part of the presentation of that the University of Florida is an incredible institution. It's doing great things. The University of Florida has 61,890 students in 2024. It's a member of the Association of American Universities, which is a highly prestigious organization. Indicative of the top-notch research and teaching that is being delivered to the students, the undergraduate students as well as the graduate students. Just last month, on October 23rd, 2025, we can go to the next slide. The Wall Street Journal listed the top 10 universities in the United States, public and private, and they rated the University of Florida as the #1 university. Forbes magazine ranks the University of Florida as the 3rd best value for its students for the month. The next slide reflects,
When you're talking about slides, Mr. Medmore, are you talking about this? Are you talking about this? Okay.
just to indicate the value of an education and a degree from the University of Florida. 73,555 applicants with an admission rate of only 24%. Now, of the graduate school enrollment, there in 23-24, there were 19,890 graduate students. That's all students that are attending the University of Florida did get a graduate program, a graduate program degree, and tuition, and not in the employment of the university. Of that 19,890, 4,243 are graduate assistants, about 25%. Now, as they apply as a graduate assistant at the University of Florida, you receive many benefits in many different ways. You have, very important, a waiver of your tuition. And this is a big and real cost to the university. It's money that is not coming in. And all of the institutions of the state university system are dependent largely on tuition to fund its operation. So a tuition waiver is a very valuable and costly benefit. In addition, you're employed by the university while you're seeking a graduate degree. So as you're advancing toward a master's degree or a PhD, you're also being employed and paid stipend. At the University of Florida, a graduate assistant is provided health insurance. And on top of that, you get a stipend. So on the next slide, we talk about what is the value of that tuition rate. And well, the graduate assistant in place at the University of Florida, 72.5% are receiving the tuition rate from out of state tuition. That has a value of $31,000. The average completion rate of a graduate assistant is 5 years. So that's 5 years. If you're a graduate assistant for 5 years, you're receiving that tuition waiver for all that period of time. And that's the value you're receiving in tuition. Now, we tried to get a weighted average cost of what this tuition waiver would be. So on the next slide, we take the 72.5% tuition waiver of 31,000, and we take the 27.5% of graduate assistants that are paid in-state, which is $11,868, and we project that out over 5 years. That's a benefit to these graduate students from the university of $128,693.50. That's not money that you just add a chair in the classroom. That's actual tuition dollars that costs to the university.
Mr. Madden, so I'm clear, this number, 31,000, 11,868. Out of state,
72.5% of the graduate assistants are out of state, so their benefit has a value of
Okay.
31,000.
and the 11,868 is in-state.
In-state,
Okay.
and there's 27.5% of that.
Yeah.
So to be fair, we get to a weighted average.
Uh-huh.
And the weighted average is $25,738.76. That's a real benefit.
Thank you.
Now, we have a minimum stipend. Minimum stipend is $20,600. If you take the minimum stipend and the tuition waiver, because the graduate assistant and the presenters told you that typically they are employed 0.5 FTE. They're not full-time employees. And typically they're employed for 9 months. So that $20,600 minimum stipend is for 9 months, 0.5 FTE. So if you take that amount and add it to the tuition waiver benefit, it is an annualized amount of compensation of $123,596.87. If you were to compare this person earning this money and getting this benefit to what is earned to a 1.0 FTE staff person or a 1.0 FTE faculty person, this is how they would compare to those two groups. They are receiving a value of cost to the university of $143,596.87.
Just so I'm clear, that number, and I guess it looks clear to me, that number is a combined amount of the tuition waiver average between out-of-state and in-state.
Correct.
And the stipend.
The minimum
For
stipend.
9 months, minimum stipend.
Right.
Okay.
And if you annualize it, if you can conform it to one FTE for 12 months, it comes out to that number. Now, that number is low. That number is low because although the minimum stipend is $20,600, most graduate assistants are making much more than that. In fact, only 600 of the 4,243 graduate assistants are paid at that minimum. The rest are paid at rates higher than that. There's graduate assistants that are actually making $50,000 stipends. So these numbers that we're presenting to you are conservative. There's another benefit that we're not factoring in, but is a significant cost, and that is the University of Florida pays the entire premium for the graduate assistant's health insurance. And in the notebook, we have, Article 18.6 of the party CBA that reflects that. The University of Florida is unique, when compared with other institutions that have graduate assistants unions and collective bargaining agreement, because we're paying 100% of health insurance. FSU pays 79.9%. University of South Florida pays 83%. And we have those articles in their CPAs in our materials. I want to point something out that I think is important background. There are 12 institutions of state universities. Only 4 of them have unionized graduate. And that is Florida State University, the University of South Florida, Florida A&M University, and then there is the University of Florida. Those 4 institutions have unionized graduate assistants and collective bargaining agreements and histories of collective bargaining. We would suggest that that is the comparator group. That you really can't go out and find other institutions to be comparators for a couple of reasons. When you look at a list of other universities in other states, well, you kind of compare apples and oranges, because some of those, you can't just look at the salary stipend, because some of those universities do not have tuition waivers. Some of those universities do not pay for health insurance. But what is comparable, we think, are these 4 state universities that have this history of collective bargaining. And when you look at our comparator group, which we'll get to stipends in a second, but in health insurance, we're doing better than our competitors. Then, again, to make the point that again, this is conservative, because our graduate assistants range at 0.5 FTE, anywhere from the 20,600, a minority is at that point, to $50,000, $60,000 in stipend. So there's no, to say that the minimum stipend is 20,600 is not to suggest that that's what everyone is making, because they're not. Now, the next slide was something that the graduate assistants union presenters spoke to, and I appreciate that. Appreciate their transparency in their presentation, because during negotiations in 2025 at the bargaining table, the graduate assistants verbally accepted the UF's wage offer. It was agreed to at the table, a minimum stipend of $20,600 for 9-month graduate assistants and a wage increase of $800. Now, why wasn't that final? Well, because we disagreed about the release time proposal in Article 16.4. The acceptance of the $20,600 and $800 was contingent upon the release time being agreed to. So that's where we're apart. That's where we were apart. I know they said nothing different. Today's a day we might have changed it. We shouldn't have free to do that. But at the bargaining table, That's what hung things up, the release time, not the money. Also, again, the graduate assistant union presenters were transparent, and I appreciate that. But these wage increases, there are 2 points on the next slide about these wage increases that we offer. Couple points really. One is that because of existing contract language that was ratified, the university went ahead and gave these raises. They gave out these raises. So they moved them in by 20,000. And they gave the act. Now they could do that. And I think if I could explain the logic of the quote they had from the chief negotiator, which was correct. The university did not have to ratify the $20,600 and the $800 because they had the ability to do it already in a ratified agreement. To do an MOU outside of the agreement would require ratification. That's the law, and the university was just articulated the law. So we looked at the factors on the next slide that are set out in 447-405. And we believe our offer, both wage and relief time, do favorably over those factors. So the next slide, we look at comparators of this group that have graduate assistance unions in Florida, state university system, common benefit platforms. Minimum stipend at UF, minimum stipend for all degrees is $20,600. Minimum stipend at USF for the 24 contract is $15,610. For 2025, the university made an offer of $19,070. At Florida A&M, they're in negotiations, but the current contract has a minimum stipend of $12,400. At FAMU, they have offered at the table $16,300. If you go to the next, Mr. Madam Auditor, without more, it would seem to me that I cannot tell from this slide that I'm looking at minimum stipend comparison. I cannot tell whether we're comparing apples to apples. For example, I cannot tell from this slide whether each other bargaining units have provide health insurance or other benefits. So have I missed it, or are you going to address that, or are you going to let this slide stand as it is? Well, there's I have all of the wage articles out of the collective bargaining agreement in your package. If you go back a couple of slides, I have the health insurance language. Right. That's in your package. And they all have tuition rates. Okay. So we're all, I think it's apples to apples. Okay. There is kind of one thing that I do want to point out while I was here. If we go to the next slide, which shows GA minimums at 0.5 FTE in 9 months, there is a slight distinction when comparing the University of South Florida to the other schools. And that distinction is that in the collective bargaining agreement, the University of South Florida, which is at the first R, University of South Florida has a minimum for graduate seeking masters and a separate, different minimum for graduates seeking PhDs. So if you go back to this sheet, where and you look at the last one, if you look at what we have for USF, that's for the masters. These other schools just have one minimum. So when we did the bar graph, you went and took the higher minimum. We took the minimum for the PhD. So if you look at UF at 20,600, that's a minimum for all graduate students. The USF bar next to it is the minimum for PhD students. Now we took a look at comparing wages provided to graduate assistants in negotiations and our faculty who are in a union and negotiating and engage in collective bargaining negotiations, and our staff that did until there was they were not certified. But this is a comparison with other UF employees. And as you can see, they compare favorably. Now, I guess I'd like to clarify something else that came out in the presentation, is that you're not here for any wage cycle except 24. So, there was no missed year of wages. This is the year, 24, 25, and we're in. And 25, 26 is still to be negotiated. Now, we looked at the cost of the graduate assistant union wage. So, 24, 25 in the previous slide, showing 2.5% for graduate assistants. That's the line. That's the one that the verbal agreement was made and the university provided in 2025. Correct. So we want to talk a little bit on the next slide about affordability. We costed out the graduate assistants union wage proposal that was presented here today. We believe it costs $25,506,707. We believe that that wage increase that we implemented cost $5,533,800. That's by our calculation, the difference is just shy of 20 million. I believe in their presentation, they said it was in excess of 17. But this is all. Now, if you were to take $19,952,867, which is the difference for our calculation, and you were to take the minimum stipend of graduate system, it would consume the funding for 775 graduates. On the next slide, we want to talk about both affordability and the interest of the public. And now I'm going to I'm sliding a little bit into the Article 16 release time issue. Obviously, it's a dedicated goal of the University of Florida to move students towards a degree in as efficiently and rapidly as it possibly can. Graduate systems very often leave the University of Florida and get large compensation jobs in science and research and engineering, in medicine, all of these schools that put out incredible leaders of the industry. But many of them that are at the minimum stipend are going to attain a PhD and then go into higher education and academic. And the starting salary for a PhD in the southeastern United States is $95,000. This should be what we're after, is to get our graduate students through this program and out into the world. Again, now I'm going on the next slide to talk about our 15 release time, why we think having graduate students interrupt their work, whether they're a teaching assistant or research assistant, to be doing organizing work or administrative work for the union, is simply not going to help. So what we have pledged to do and have done is we accommodate the schedules of the representatives to allow maximum participation with the minimum disruption to their employment schedule.
Your position is that you're currently doing it.
We are currently doing it. And we'll see in a second how that has reflected in the relationship between the parties. So Article 16 on the release time right now is we have 4.32 FTE units of release time under Article 16. And that's 42 the language of contract currently used for conducting UF-GAU business at the university or state. In 5.5 FTE English. We think it's better policy that Americans should be dedicated to employment to the teaching they're doing and learning from that experience, for the research they're doing. I guess I'm stating the obvious. If you're a graduate assistant and you're doing research and you're working with a faculty member, an esteemed faculty member with a PhD and a grant, and is in a lab doing cutting edge research. It's not good policy or practice to say, I'm going to not do that this semester. I'm not going to sit. I'm not going to work on this project. I'm not going to work on this grant this semester because I want to be released from that so I can do administrative work for the union. And because it just doesn't work that way. You can't just walk in and out of that research protocol. I mean, we'll be honest, it's probably easier to release somebody from teaching than it would be from research. Because if they're assigned to just teaching a class, they could not do that work. you were just released from that assignment. Still, you know, at that point in your career, to be able to participate in the delivery of class or course for credit is something that's going to be extremely helpful for you as a graduate student when you go out into the world and potentially be an academic teaching at a college university. You're going to have that experience to build.
I have a question for you, and if the union would perhaps consider addressing this after Mr. Landlord's finished with his presentation, if you have other comments. Is it your position that graduate assistants, some graduate assistants who are representatives of the union, take large bodies of time off, FTEs, if you will, which would significantly interfere with their research? Or is it the case that they take small portion of their time to deal with administrative responsibilities in the union, as opposed to taking large segments of time? I'm not sure I understand exactly what the position is of the university in that regard.
Okay. Yeah, because it is some confusion. The typical released graduate assistant is released for 0.5 FTE. That's their entire employment for that period of time. So 100% of their research or 100% of their teaching goes away, and they are just full. Well, instead of being employed to the 0.5 FTE, let's say that's 20 hours a week, they're engaged with the union instead. Now, we don't believe that time is necessary to accomplish the goal of this collective bargaining relationship.
I understand your position.
And that's our next slide.
And if the union would like to address that after Mr. Manward is finished, I would appreciate that. Go ahead, Mr. Manward.
So if you currently, if we take a snapshot, collective bargaining right now with the GAU and University of Florida, there's only one GAU that attends negotiations on bargaining. They don't need it. They are able to field the bargaining team and conduct collective bargaining without all being released. In terms of representing at grievance hearings or at arbitrations, the University of Florida and the Graduate Assistants Union have had a spectacular relationship of being able to work out their issues. So it's remarkable that in 2025, not a single grievance was filed. Not a single grievance hearing was conducted. So we think that it's simply not appropriate or necessary. So we also would release time at the other comparators. It's on the next slide. There is release time at FSU. There is release time at USF. We have there's 2 total FTE units in the collective bargaining agreement at FSU. They're able to conduct their work with that. There's 2 total FTE of release time at USF for that same period of time. Here, UF, we have 4.32, over twice as much. The last slide is, just a summary of what we would, ask to be recommended by the magistrate, for, 2024-2025. In Article 10, the minimum stipend would be $20,600. Raises would be not $800 for $1,067 for 12 months. And we would ask that the recommendation be that there is no release time in Article 16, which is GAU. Now, I guess if, hold on, I have before. I guess I'll take this opportunity to go through my notes on the presentation that I think I have. I think I've hit on everything. One thing I guess I would like to point out, there was a figure that was provided to the special magistrate by the GAU presenters on total assets. We all know that total assets of the state university, in the state university system in Florida, is not indicative at all of what's available for salaries. I think that's all I have to say. I hit on everything else during my presentation in response to some of the other points to make, but this is 24-25, not 25-26. I believe that in the survey, it looked like there were 400 or so respondents out of over 4,000 graduate assistants.
Thank you, Mr. Lattimore. Does the union have a response that they would like to offer regarding Mr. Lattimore's comment?
We do. We have some questions if you want to do that chronologically, or if we want us to start off with our response. Either is fine.
Whatever works better for you. If the response fits into the flow, or whatever, however you think. I'd just like to hear your response to the question that I have.
Do you mind restating specifically the questions, like make sure we address it?
I'd like to understand how graduate assistants use their release time.
Okay, cool. I think we should just start off with that and then go through our questions chronologically. I also do want to clarify that while in practice we have typically assigned it as 0.5 FTE, we could assign less to a certain individual. If somebody wanted to do a split release time, they could get assigned 0.25 or 0.33 and could do both at the same time. In practice, we have not done that. Typically, we assign it to graduate assistants who need an alternative assignment anyways, considering if someone is released from teaching, that class still needs to be taught. These individuals will be in the office and are available to students during their assigned office hours. They do communications packets and public releases for social media to ensure the graduate assistants are informed on matters of the union and things that are related to what we do as the collective bargaining association. We we also have by appointment office hours, so they are essentially on call for a lot more than 20 hours. These students are doing a lot more than that on routine. They help redirect students who need university resources, or graduate assistants need help with any of their employment situation. So if questions about benefits, we monitor our email 24/7 as well. Those are just some examples of what those students do, if that fully covers the question. But I just want to make sure that I was mindful of the fact that we don't always do 0.5 FTE.
Okay, that helps. Thank you.
Yeah, understood. Cool. So I think we can go through questions chronologically. I do have, originally, the admissions rate presented by the university is from undergraduate applicants. Do you have the graduate rates?
No.
Understood.
Okay, next up, we mentioned during the benefits of a graduate assistant, the tuition waiver. Is that tuition waiver or some sort of tuition waiver also offered to other employees at the University of Florida outside of graduate assistant?
Are you asking me, is the tuition waiver sometimes offered to individuals other than
Yes.
credentials?
Well, other employees at the University of Florida.
Well, there is a program where employees of the state of Florida and employees of the state university system can take a certain number of courses. Yeah. Although I think they have to be space available, and there's limitations on their use of that.
Okay. One of the other notes here is that 72.5% of GAs are out-of-state tuition waivers. Is that for graduate assistants, or is that percentage based off of graduate students and the larger number? Just for clarification, I believe one of the requirements for most graduate assistants is to attempt to apply for in-state tuition as soon as feasible within the state of Florida.
Well, 72.5% of the graduates
Okay.
are out of state, receiving out of state tuition waiver.
Okay.
Well, being out of state and using an out of state tuition waiver isn't necessarily the same, since they are expected to convert as soon as possible in their employment.
I didn't say anything about how many people.
Okay. One question as well is, you have average completion time of degree is 5 years. A good subset of our unit are master's students, and their degrees are typically 2 years. So 5 years seems a bit of a high number. I would love to know how that was calculated. Because most programs for PhDs are around 4 years. They can go 5 or 6, but most masters are definitely at 1.5 to 2 years, and we represent them as well.
But it would still be applicable to any Kansas graduate assistant who is seeking a PhD. I mean, if you wanted to say for a master's, that is 2 years, they would have $25,738 twice, or $50,000 benefit. Yeah, okay. The number of years.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand the average degree time, because that was applied unilaterally across all GAs. So I want to make sure that we do have some GAs that are here for 5 years, but the typical programs are either 2, 4 years, and we do have some that do go to 6 years or longer, depending on the individual.
Yeah, and the number of years that's why we gave it to you at a 5-year amount in an annual.
Mm-hmm. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I mean,
If you have a question, we're not going to take questions from the audience here. If the audience has a question, bring it to your representative and have your representative determine whether that question is appropriate to be asked.
Okay, my apologies. He was on our bargaining team, so I'm used to him being there, but I understand.
So do you understand his question?
I don't have his question. No,
We can get it.
we can get it. Yeah, we can get it.
Okay.
Cool. I'll ask mine while you get that. And then, okay, so considering that the tuition waiver is also given to competitor institutions, and for example, just off the top of my head, I know University of Michigan has a collective bargaining history. These are not apples to oranges when we're looking at the second slide that I specifically presented. Does the university think it's legitimate to consider that as income to graduate assistants, considering that it can't pay bills and is also offered at these peer institutions? Is that like your official position?
It's a benefit. It's a benefit and a cost to the university. That cannot be denied. And not every university provides tuition waivers. There are many universities that require graduate students, even if they're graduate students, to pay tuition. And their tuition levels, by the way, are much higher than the tuition levels of the University of Florida. For example, North Carolina State University requires their graduate students to pay their tuition, like any other graduates, at rates higher than the university.
Was that on our list?
Which one?
A list of 10.
I'm not sure. The next one I had here is we have a list saying 600 graduate assistants out of the 4,200 are paid at the minimum. Is that the current contract minimum of 19,200, or is that the 20,600 that has been implemented without being ratified by contract?
Because they're continuing.
It's my understanding that that's at the current minimum of 20,000.
Okay, I just want to draw that out because as part of the raises that were implemented in January, that also included a merit raise that would have brought all continuing graduate assistants off of the minimum. So the 600 number would then be minimized because all the graduate assistants would have received that merit raise, correct?
Not, so, okay. To get the raise that you're talking about, of let's say $800 or $1,000. Like you said in your presentation, you had to have been here at least a semester. So there are graduate assistants that wouldn't have qualified for that because they wouldn't have started to be eligible.
So the ones who wouldn't have received that raise are GAs who have started in this fall and the ones who had started in the spring semester. But all other GAs, unless they had a negative review, would have gotten that merit raise and be off of the minimum stipend currently.
They would, right, to not get the raise, you would have been in.
Okay.
So you understand that this is intentionally misleading, this number? Because this is only first-year students who did not receive a raise from being here for over than 1 semester. That's what that 600 is.
Well, if you're saying that everybody who is except for new hires are making over the minimum, I can accept that figure.
Understood. Cool.
Okay. And then,
Better for 30%.
yeah. Do you know what percentage of GAs are paid below the level of 26,000, the number that we presented here?
I don't think anybody's paid below the minimum.
The minimum that we were presenting, sorry, the proposed that we had of 26,000 for a 9-month graduate.
No.
Okay. We believe that to be around 79%. Health insurance, one question here. Obviously, health insurance is not something we were discussing at Impasse, so not something we were expecting to see here. Do you have an estimate of how much this costs per graduate assistant for the individual premium?
How much does it cost to the graduate assistant?
How much does it cost to graduate assistant? How much does it cost to the university? Because it says here that they pay the entire individual premium of graduates' health insurance policy.
Right, so it would be zero.
That's not true. We pay for it.
Wait. There are two questions.
Mhm.
And I'm here. One is, I think, how much does it cost the university
Yeah.
for this 100%?
I'll get that.
And then the second question sounds like is, how much? What is the cost to the GA for health insurance?
Yes.
And I'm hearing, as far as the cost of the insurance, 100% zero. So is there some cost to students, GAs, in addition to? All right. So let's deal with those two questions. We've got two questions. One, how much does it cost the university to provide that care?
I'm getting that number for you. So I'll have it number by the end of,
Okay.
all of this.
Right.
As opposed to the other schools, University of Florida pays 100% of the individual's premium.
Right. Now, there's a cost in addition to the cost of insurance, apparently, that you're
Yeah.
alluding to.
There's a cost for base insurance for an individual, and it goes up as you get family independence. And then there is an add-on cost for vision and extra dental care as well.
Okay, so I understand Mr. Matamore's figure is for an individual, not a family. So if it's a family coverage costs more, and if you want medical, dental, or for eyes, then that will cost more. But he's talking about basic coverage for insurance without any of these extras is 100%.
We do
What
have
you're
a
talking
cost.
about is there are additional costs for insurance, including dental, optics, and family.
There's a base cost for any insurance at all, and then there's additional costs. The GAs wanting to use the health insurance, I do have to pay, even if they're an individual and not getting that. just for the access to data grad care as our insurance is called. That is negotiated through the contract.
Well, I have in the materials our contract language and the contract language from FSU and USF. That'll explain.
Okay. And obviously, the parties may address this question further in their briefs.
Moving forward, and you can ask questions if you want to. On the May 27, 2025, the verbal acceptance of the UF wage offer. Obviously, I think we addressed this in our PowerPoint. That was connected to these discussions on 16.4, and that was to try to find that point. It has been, additional 6 months since that offer. This includes a wage increase of $800. I assume that's for 9 months GAs, and that's how it's for 12 months. In the latest offer by the University of Florida, there was no merit raise included in those proposed raises. There was the merit raise that was unilaterally given during the January negotiations, but there is not a contract merit raise built into UF later offer. Is this a change from that position, or is the university willing to offer an $800 merit raise to 9 months GAs from the current point that we are at?
The wage offer that was verbally accepted is in our pack. Whatever.
So that would have been for that period. There is no wage offer. Does not include an additional, as I understand your question, an additional $800 merit increase for the next year.
Yeah, because this was a discussion at the bargaining table, because some of their offers did include an additional merit raise, and we said, did you intend to include an additional merit raise? And they said no. So the latest language had that set that any merit raise would be $0 for this contract.
All right. Well, all right. Let's not confuse things. What we offered was a raise that we had already put in place of $800 from $1,067 from
For 24, 25.
24, 25. We already implemented.
Yeah.
I think this is just like well, were we going to? So no, there wasn't an additional. We were just offering a wage package that we had put on the table, that we saw that you're accepting, that you verbally accepted, and then we had already put into effect. And that was $800 for 9 months and $1,066.
This claim of like a verbal acceptance also happened far after it was imposed unilaterally across employees with 1 hour notice, just for like chronological purposes to make sure that's understood. And again, like we've said, we did this verbal acceptance in exchange for continued current contract language in Article 16, which was not offered to us. And now that it's been over 2 years, that reopener that informed that decision that we made when we verbally accepted it is no longer in existence. It's been over 2 years. So that I don't consider it valid, considering that the information that was given to that verbal acceptance was we would have a reopener, we would keep Article 16. We've missed both reopeners now, 2 years, and we also have not been offered a continuation of current contract language that we have for over 20 years in Article 16.
Well, that's the question. The point I made, why it's in the presentation, in 2025, this year, you met the collective bargaining session. You agreed to these numbers of the minimum stipend, $800 and $1,026. That was okay for you for this what's at issue, except for the release time. And the release time is what was the hang up. Not the difference between 20,600 and 26,000 at that moment. But that was in 2025. So, I just want to point, and I think it's a very compelling point, because even after disrespect. And again, we're talking about 24, 25. not 25, 26. So there's not two reopenings.
I mean, we were talking about the full book negotiations that could conclude at the end of 2023, right? So these are, if we had done negotiations at the time, obviously there were other considerations. If that contract had been negotiated in time, our contract typically includes and has for a long time an annual reopen of article. That's where we're triggering it. And that's per calendar year. I think also, I just want to, for this this $800 merit raise increase, just to kind of go back and really connect on this, this merit raise, you know, as I think we showed the language on the screen, that matched the language that's within the contract, but that is not through the contract at all. That merit raise was just given throughout the university and is not put in the contract at all. The waiver utilized by the university in 10.5 says that any raises given in that are above and beyond anything else stipulated within that article. So that merit raise was given freely by the university with an hour notice to us, but that is not included in any sort of negotiations. The negotiations, if we were to approve on a contract right now, would be a $0 merit raise for graduation.
Well, I don't know if it's a question that it's not.
I think that's their position.
That's their position.
If you disagree with their position, you can do it.
Yeah, yes, I do, because this process is for the consideration of articles that it, which in the case of the 10 Article 16. It's not about process. It's not about bargaining. The process of collective bargaining. And there's another forum for that if you wanted to go to another forum. But we're not here to debate whether or not the parties like the collective bargaining process. The university exercises contractual rights. And
Trying to take your point, Mr. Matamore. The issues before me are Articles 10 and 16. Whether or not, and the parties' respective positions at impasse on Articles 10 and 16. So I think the parties have articulated their position in this point. And you'll do it again in your brief, and see what happens.
Of course, yeah. We had other questions throughout the rest of the presentation, if we have more time for that.
Sure.
Of course. So one of the next things I had was we had this minimum.
Can I go for this lunch?
Of course. Okay. Yeah. We had this list of minimum stipend comparisons between the universities and these other universities, and then we have this chart, but the numbers on the chart don't appear to match the values on this list before, so I'm just trying to ask for some clarification on what's causing those differences. For instance, FAMU on the first list is 12,480, but on the second chart, it is somewhere between the $18,000 to $19,000 range.
Now, show me which numbers I see the bar chart.
Yeah, it's the one before the bar chart and then the bar chart. The comparison between those two appear to be different.
well, as I pointed out, if you go to the first chart, that is the language in the current collective bargaining agreement language that we have in the material that we provided. Contractually, that is the numbers. The bar chart is what we have been advised by these universities as what their practice.
So, Mr. Britton, can you point out which numbers do not appear on the preceding chart, minimum stipend compensation, comparison?
So
those numbers do not conform with the numbers on the bar chart.
Yes, if we look at FAMU, they're listed on the first as 12,480. But when we look at them on the bar chart, they're up there in the $18,000 to $19,000 range. So it's a big discrepancy that I was wondering about.
We've been transparent and honest this is what we were told by these universities is what their practice is, but what is contractually obligated is on the sheet of paper.
Okay, so this is what's within the contracts, and this is what the universities operate as their effective minimum.
So they got it.
Okay. Okay, so on this comparison with other UF universities, I believe I understand this chart correctly, but my question is, please address if we have any issues here. We have, these are the percentage raises given in each calendar year or academic year for these different subsets of the University of Florida. Academic year? Okay. So that doesn't align with what we typically use for our calendar year increases. So I'm just checking. And then my question is, are these different employment levels in the university paid similar amounts, or are they paid different disparities? These are percentage increases, but it has nothing to do with the underlying number of how much these individuals are paid.
It's an analysis of the overall value of what was provided as compensation.
Okay. Moving to the next one, to affordability, we have the cost of our wage proposal and the cost of the UF wage proposal. That is, for the cost of the UF wage proposal, that is the amount that the university has already paid to implement the 20,600 minimum outside of the contract, and the merit raises that were outside of the contract as already have done.
You're doing an, this is what a year of increase proposed wage for GAU University increase that is the position of the US.
So I just did quick math really quick with your total cost that you did. And previously in your brief and in your presentation, you did say that there are some graduate assistants who do get more than the minimum stipend. And just to quickly address this total cost that we believe is inaccurate compared to ours and is much inflated, if you divide that by 4,200, just I've rounded, you get about our raise. So it looks like you just multiplied our raise amount that we're requesting by the number of graduate assistants to get that number, and that fails to consider people who are already above the minimum. So I believe this number is incorrect. Is there any, is that what you did to get this number, or how did you get this 25 million?
We did a cost analysis of what it would be out of our pocket if we implemented your position. And that's the numbers from.
Okay, and that's taking into account the current amount that graduate assistants are paid, and taking into account that some will receive no raise at all, but some will receive variable amounts of raise.
Yeah, actual cost.
Okay, and that's what we've done as well with our unit to receive our $17 million figure, including the merit raise. Okay, moving forward, this is just a note for the next slide, the 19 million figure. It says April applying for 775 graduate students. We are graduate students, but we are graduate assistants. That's what we're here. So our graduate students is sort of a different disclaimer there.
That should be graduate assistant.
Okay. Did you have a next question?
And the only thing I have is a question about RT. So.
Okay. Yeah. I think it's a very clear position that being paid poverty wages now does not amount to starting PhD salary after graduation. It doesn't affect how people pay bills now. Is this PhD salary? Is this for all disciplines of potential PhDs, or is this for select disciplines across?
All PhDs.
All PhDs. Okay.
In your brief, are you going to show where these numbers came from, or like have any citations at all whatsoever, considering that they're not really in this PowerPoint?
For most of this, they're in the.
Okay. So I think we touched a little bit on some of the RTs. I just want to make a note, RTs, while they are serving, are not typically historically not serving as RAs or TAs in that point. So they are taking a semester off of those guidelines to do their other work. But what questions do you have?
Okay. Yeah. I guess the first one is, considering that we've cited case law and a variety of services that we provided, especially within our response, do you have any specific articulated argument to claim that it is not mutually beneficial?
What is not mutually beneficial?
The release time program. because we cited case law that we've had a special magistrate in the past say that is helpful for harmonious labor relations, and a variety of the services that are provided to student employees. Do you have like a specific argument as to why those services are not mutually beneficial?
Yeah, there is, and I'll explain this in my brief, but, there is a decision, an opinion by the Public Employees Relations Commission, having to do with release time, in higher education. And, it's opinion the Miami-Dade College, but I'll attach a copy of the case opinion to my brief. But it is, it says that release time should be used very sparingly. That public employers going into collective bargaining in the future should scrutinize the amount and use of release time. That public entities in Florida, including higher education institutions, should not be using public funds to fund the administrative organizational activities of employer organizations. It's a relatively new case and a relatively new development, but it directs all release time to be limited to direct representational activities, part of those release. It does not seem that release time is automatically of mutual benefit, but reflects that release time for the benefit of the employer organization is not correct.
If, sorry, and maybe I missed to say, if that case law calls for the scrutinization and maybe limitation of FTE, why did the university go from agreeing to maintaining most of our current RT programs to the complete elimination, which would put us even below these other comparisons that you've drawn up for us?
For all the reasons that I explained in my presentation, that we feel that it's not necessary, and we feel that it is not the best use of the efforts of the graduates.
Okay.
Okay. Do you have any other questions?
I do just, no, I think we're good.
Has any prompted, this discussion prompted any further from you this morning? No? Does either party wish to, there's no reason for a closing argument. You're going to make your closing argument in your brief. Do you have any comments further regarding the presentation today?
I guess the final thing that we want to emphasize is that if we're going to get rid of the program, we might as well get a little bit closer to a livable wage.
Yeah.
That's kind of right.
Okay, I think I understand the party's position. I would say this, the parties have made their positions clear to me, and their presentations have been mercifully brief. I have sat through days of presentations, and I think you both have distilled it to the fundamental issues. I think I understand them, and I look forward to your groups. Thanks.
Thank you.
Now let's talk about a briefing schedule. We don't have a court reporter. We don't have that 2-week delay as far as sending your brief. So let me open up my calendar here. All right, what's your pleasure, party?
How long will it take you to present your briefs?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we would typically need very long. I think, we would probably need at least a couple of days, but you could say it's due on Friday, we would work to get that done. We would take the time necessary, but any time over 3 days, we would be happy to make that work.
Okay, I suspect Mr. Mattamore's time is a little less flexible than that. Mr. Mattamore, let's hear it's the 17th. You're talking about today? Yes, today is the 17th.
Seventeenth and February,
That's the Wednesday.
I think it sounds good.
Now, if you want a decision from me before you take off for the holiday, you need to back that up a little bit. If you could say the 15th of December, I can tell you that I would have my recommendations by the 19th.
15th would be fine.
I agree.
Okay? Is there anything further before we wrap it up?
I believe so.
We do have like archival recording if any party needs it or would like to review it for any particular reason. We can make that available to the university or the magistrate.
Thank you. Thank you both. Thank you, parties. Appreciate it. Again, I appreciate the specificity and the breadth of the presentations. Safe travel. Mr. Young, thank you, Mr. Mattamore. You too.
What did we get you in for? What did we get you in for?
Workshop.
Awesome.